Hello and welcome to the biggest launch in Q-SYS history. Q-SYS Designer version 10 is now available alongside a reimagined core lineup, a brand new Q-SYS VisionSuite, changes to control and video, and big updates for software licensing. My name's James Martin and I'm here to tell you all about it. So let's get right into it. Firstly, there's big changes to our lineup of Q-SYS Core processors, starting with the Core 110F, which came out quite some time ago, and it remains one of the most popular Q-SYS cores. It's got a unique combination of audio, control, network I/O, which makes it great for a lot of different applications. But the industry's moved on a little bit since then, so we thought it was time for a refresh. So we're introducing the Core 24F, which refreshes the Core 110's form factor, but with a dramatic leap forward in processing power. Let's look at the hardware first. On the front, you've got the same design language that was introduced with the smaller cores, but we've listened to your feedback and we've brought back the front display. And on the rear, we've got the same audio I/O as the Core 110, but with GPIO and with two RS-232 ports. We've also got a USB-C port for AV bridging, but it includes 4 LAN ports like the larger server cores, so it can support a redundant audio network and an additional control or IT network. The Core 24F has around 50% more processing power than the Core 110, and the key stats you need to know are up to 24 acoustic echo cancellation channels, up to 160 total networked audio channels, and 64 of those can be Dante channels, and it supports 96 Q-SYS peripherals. All of these enhancements versus the Core 110 open up new possibilities in spaces that require larger channel counts or more complex network topologies. Think about auditoriums, large divisible spaces, sports arenas, or of course, hospitality and themed entertainment. But what if you need even more power? Well, that space is currently occupied by the Core 610, but that's being replaced by 2 new server cores. The Core X10 and the X20R offer far more processing power than the Core 24, but in a more install-friendly form factor than the Core 610. By the way, the R in X20R stands for redundant, hot swappable power supplies, perfect for those mission critical systems. And of course, having 2 cores in this space rather than 1 gives you even more flexibility when you're designing centralized, powerful systems. By the way, none of these new cores require scaling licenses. All of the power is available out of the box. And on the Core Nano and the Core 8 Flex, we've combined the 2 scaling licenses that were previously available, giving you the option to double the processing power across a wider range of categories on those cores. And speaking of licensing, there's a big change coming for all cores in version 10. We introduced the scripting and UCI licenses back in 2018, which was quite a while ago, and that made Q-SYS Control an optional feature, and customers could choose to add it or not. But since then, a lot has changed. A huge amount of development work has gone into Q-SYS Control, and today, almost all customers choose to add both of those licenses to their Q-SYS cores. So, for that reason, in version 10, neither the UCI or scripting license is required, and every core gets to use every Q-SYS Control feature. This also means that if you're running an older Q-SYS core, all you need to do is upgrade to make use of all the features that Q-SYS Control has to offer. So that's what's going on with hardware in version 10, but let's talk about the new software features, starting with Q-SYS VisionSuite, which has been completely reimagined from the ground up, along with new hardware and a new dedicated VisionSuite component inside Q-SYS Designer. But rather than me explaining it all to you here, let's take a look at an upcoming training course, VisionSuite Design and Deployment, and I'll explain it to you there. Hello and welcome to Q-SYS VisionSuite Design and Deployment Training. My name's James Martin, and in this course you're going to learn how to create cutting-edge systems using Q-SYS VisionSuite all the way from design through to deployment and commissioning. Now, you might already be familiar with VisionSuite from older versions of Q-SYS, but Q-SYS version 10 introduces a brand new version of VisionSuite, built from the ground up to deliver brand new customer experiences, to be much easier to deploy, and to run on some shiny new VisionSuite hardware. So, what's new? First, we've consolidated system design and deployment in a single component, VisionSuite Designer, which now also handles presenter tracking and participant tracking in one place. For room participants, VisionSuite now supports active speaker framing, based on 3D data from intelligent microphones. This means there's no more need to create presets because it creates a shot on the spot, which also results in a much better end-user experience and dramatically reduced commissioning times. VisionSuite now features built-in voice activity detection, which means it only responds to people actually talking in the room and won't switch cameras if people are making noise, you know, eating packets of crisps, drinking cups of tea. Jack, you mind? I'm trying to film a video. Unbelievable. There's next generation VisionSuite accelerator hardware, smaller, enterprise grade, and now a native Q-SYS peripheral built for the future of VisionSuite. And lastly, room-based licensing, which gives you perpetual functionality, 3 years of updates, and supports 2 vision-driven cameras and up to 14 audio-driven cameras, which is enough to power a room like this.
Or like this.
Or this.
Or like this.
Or like this.
Or like this.
Or this.
Or this. Next up is control, and we've added a bunch of new control features in version 10, starting with a couple of very handy components. Let's take a look at a couple of new control components, starting with the when component, which is very simple. It does something when you want it to do something. Now, this has always been possible using the command scheduler, but if you wanted that to be controllable from within the schematic, or you wanted to put it on a UCI to let the end user change the schedule on a touch panel, it was quite difficult to do that, and it meant that you had to write your own scripts or make some quite complex control logic for that. Now, instead, with this when component, very, very simply, you can choose days of the week, and you can choose a time, and you can choose a pulse length, and then when this component is enabled, it will pulse that active LED, which simply gets wired downstream to do whatever it is you want it to do. Very, very straightforward. Now, we also have this component called the sequencer. Let's take a look at this. So this is slightly different. This is when you want to do a bunch of different things in a sequence. And again, you could always do this with, block controller, text controller, or even using control delays. But this is going to give you a lot more flexibility. Let's take a little look. I'm going to emulate my file. I'm going to open this up, and let's see what we have here. So you get multiple steps, and you can configure how many in the properties. And all you do is you choose the delay between each step and how long each step should pulse for. So imagine a scenario where you want several things to happen. Maybe you want the lights to come on and then wait a little bit, and then the music comes in, and then something else happens. And this could be used for themed entertainment or just for a corporate AV project or maybe a higher education project. And if I press start here, you're going to see we get 1 second, 1 second, and then 2 seconds. That's how that's been set up. Now, of course, we could combine these together. Let's say I want to run a sequence of events at a certain time of day. I can take my when component and I'm going to wire it into the start control pin of my sequencer. Then let's bring over a few other components that I made earlier. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to wire up my audio player. I'm then going to wire up a snapshot controller, and maybe I'm going to also fade in some lights here. So I've got a ArtNet controller plugin that's going to send out some ArtNet lighting control onto the network, and I'm going to just press and hold a value stepper with my sequencer to fade in those lights. Let's just emulate this here. And then if I open up the sequencer and I press start, we're going to see it play the audio player, it's going to load the snapshot, and now it's going to press and hold and fade in those lights. And of course, all of that can happen whenever we want using the when component. With this new version of Q-SYS, the layers panel in the UCI editor has got a much needed upgrade. So here I've got a really simple design. It's not really a design, it's just a little demo. But if I go over to this UCI, let's take a look. I've got some controls from my NV, I've got some controls from a matrix mixer, and this is in 9.13. Okay, so this is kind of the status quo, and you can see here we've got what we're all used to. We can see knob, button, LED, and of course when you click on these it selects it in the editor. So that's where we're at today, but it's not particularly clear. You can't tell just by looking in this left hand section what is what, right? What does that button do? What does that LED link to? You can find all that out, but it doesn't show you right there. Now let's compare that to version 10, and here it's a completely different story. So now for every single element on the UCI, it shows me on the left-hand side, firstly, what type of control it is. So for example, button. Then the presentation, so this button is a toggle, but it could be shown as a momentary or a trigger button. And then it also shows you where it's from. Now these controls, they're dragged in from the schematic out of an NV32 decoder. And it shows you output 1, AV3 selection, AV2 selection. Okay, we've got the LEDs, we've got the buttons. Straight away, we can see what is what without having to cross-reference it somewhere else inside a Q-SYS Designer. Now, if you had a toolbox control, you get a little bit more information. So let's just add, let's say, a trigger button. I'm going to drag this in from the UCI toolbox. And it also tells me the name here. So remember, toolbox controls, they're not inherently linked to something in the schematic, but instead it shows us its name. So if I rename this to something else, then you see that there as well. Just a very handy quality of life upgrade that's going to make editing UCIs just a little bit easier. Okay, so let me talk to you about Flexbox, which is a bit of a game changer for organizing multiple items on a UCI and also changing positions of things dynamically. Now, this is a fairly common thing to do. I've got a UCI here for a boardroom, and this room has a lot of video sources. So I've got a lot of buttons here, which are controlling switching on a NV decoder. Now, I just want a grid of buttons, so I've dragged them all out, and now I've got the kind of fairly boring task of selecting these and moving them around. And of course, I could do all of this manually, and it's going to be no fun at all. So you could right-click, and you could say, pack these, and then maybe we could take another 3, and we could pack those. But this is still quite error-prone, quite easy to make mistakes doing it this way, and also just quite slow. But there we go. Right, we've done it. But then, of course, it might be that you're working on another room, you want to use the same UCI, and you actually have fewer sources, or maybe you have more sources. Maybe you want to space things out a bit, right? Maybe somebody says, actually, we want more gap between these. So now we know, again, we have to sort of manually move things. You can see that this isn't a really wonderful way to position things on a UCI. Now, instead, I can use the new Flexbox, and you get the Flexbox from the UCI toolbox. It's down here under Graphic Tools. There's this new thing called Flexbox. And with Flexbox, you just drag it into the UCI like this, and it shows up just as a very simple box. Now, I've already got one here. I've just made it so we can't actually see the border. I'll show you on my Layers panel. We have Flexbox over here. All right, and I've just positioned the Flexbox so that it covers that area which I want to fill with these buttons. And now all I need to do is select these buttons, and I can just drag them inside the Flexbox. So it's a bit like dragging it inside another layer. And just like that, the buttons fill up the Flexbox. You can see it on the left. I've got the layer, I've got the Flexbox, and inside the Flexbox, I've got all of these items. And now I can just resize the Flexbox. And if I make things a little bit, let's say, narrower and wider, you can see all those items reconfigure themselves. If I wanted to have it be a bit taller, I could do the opposite, and they're going to go that way. Now, in the properties section for the Flexbox, you've got a few options, and the naming of these, like justify content, align content, these actually come from CSS terms, because Flexbox is actually a web technology, and we're sort of implementing that inside our UCI editor. And this gives you a lot of flexibility, no pun intended. So with this, I could change it to be rows instead of columns. All right, and now as I make it really wide, it's going to go all the way across the screen. I could also adjust the gap here. I could say I want to have a bigger gap between items, just like that. And you could change a few other things, right? We could change the justify content to actually change the alignment left to right. You can change the align content, and that's going to move it top to bottom. So you can see that there's a huge number of options here for how you actually want things to look on a page. Now, another nice thing about the Flexbox is that if you have another system which is similar but maybe has fewer items within the Flexbox, you can just change the invisibility of items inside the Flexbox. So here you can just hide items and it's as if they've gone, but then for another project you could just bring them back like this. Now, the really cool thing about this is you can do all of that while the system is running. Now this system is running for real, and on this core we've got a Lua script which is going to show or hide these buttons based on whether or not the source is actually connected. Then we're going to see the Flexbox reorder the items, and we're also going to select the source when it gets connected. All of this is being done just by us changing the visibility property of these controls. Now, one of the new video features is that you can take whatever is being shown on output 1 of an NV32 and you can put a preview of that on a UCI. Let's see how that works. Now, in this file, I have a very simple NV32 setup, but in Designer version 10, any NV32 decoder can mirror its output to one of those MediaCast preview controls, just like a camera can. So this is really useful for showing it, for example, on a touch panel, or even seeing it here inside the Designer schematic. Now, it's really easy to do this. This is the decoder I'm working with, and I'm going to be able to see whatever is currently on this output. And you just get the new MediaCast output component from the inventory and drop it in. Right, that's it. Now what you've got is you've got a output preview control here, and you've also got some settings for resolution and the ability to enable it. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to put it on my UCI, and I'm just going to put it there, and let's make it nice and big as well, something like that. And with that, I'm just going to run the file. And now with the file running, all we need to do is open up that MediaCast output component, and we can see already we've got a preview of what's coming out of that decoder. This is a PC desktop from one of the PCs in my training room. Now, it's currently a 1 frame per second preview, and if we look at the touch panel over here, we can see that same thing is there, and I can move something onto that screen, and you see we've got 1 frame per second preview as I'm moving a window around there. But if I enable this preview stream, then it becomes a 30 frame per second video, exactly the same format that you get out of the cameras for previewing their resolution. And if I connect my laptop and switch sources, you can see that touch panel updating as we switch sources. So as you can see, this really is one of the biggest releases in Q-SYS history, but there's even more that I haven't got time to talk about, some of which you can see over here. So of course, check out the release notes, do go and download the Q-SYS Designer software, and we can't wait to see what you do with Q-SYS version 10. See you next time.